Some people live with autism for their entire life without ever getting a formal diagnosis. Often this is simply because autism wasn't widely known or understood when they were growing up. For adults, a diagnosis of autism can help to explain why they always found certain things difficult. For children, it can mean the right support is put in place from an early age. Autism affects over 700,000 people in the UK, more than 100 people, but for all the lives touched by autism, there are still a lot of persistent myths about what the lifelong and disabling condition actually is and what living with it is really like. Misconceptions such as autism only affecting children or that all people with the condition are geniuses can have a damaging effect on the lives of people living with autism, making it more difficult to have their condition recognised and to access the support they need.
So what was it like growing up with the brother with autism?
It was challenging. When he was first, obviously when we were growing up and we were younger, it was okay. He was, it's hard to say normal because, you know, everyone is normal to an extent, but obviously he had special needs.
Yeah.
But he, you know, we got on well and we did everything together, we played together. And then it kind of got to when he was a teenager.
Right.
And once, obviously, then hormones start and the changes with being a teenager, he got worse.
Yeah.
He wouldn't, you know, he wouldn't understand certain things and he would kick off and the doctor wouldn't really do anything for him, wouldn't give him tablets and stuff because he didn't believe in all that.
Yeah.
So it was challenging because you'd never know where you were with him.
Yeah.
Him kicking off just constantly, and obviously he couldn't help it, but over the smallest things, like I want to go and do this and we can't do that, and he would kick off, and it was very challenging. Very.
Is there any particular moments where you find it particularly difficult?
Well, yes. He obviously, when you have Asperger's, which is what he has,
Yeah.
he gets angry very easily. And so when he does get angry, he hasn't done it most recently. He was growing up, when he was a teenager, he'd lash out. And a lot of the time it was only me and my mum and my little brother at home. And he would go for them, and I would get in between them because, you know, and that is scary.
Yeah.
Also, he used to, if my dad was home, he'd go for my dad. And my dad's, you know, he's got high blood pressure and stuff anyway.
Right.
So that's scary when he goes with him, you know, I don't know if anything's going to happen to my dad because that happens. It's just tough because, obviously, like I say, it hasn't happened recently. It was all when he was a teenager.
Right. So like now because he's more of an adult, he's calmed down.
Yeah.
To a degree.
Yeah. To a degree he has. I mean, you know, you still get the sudden outburst of anger and shouting now and again. But to how he was, no, he seems to, fingers crossed, he's doing better. Just, you know, it was difficult though growing up, being a middle child anyway.
Yeah.
And everyone kind of loved my little brother. And then he had autism, my older brother, and so I was kind of left out, and everything seemed to be about them too. And
Yeah.
so to me it was difficult growing up with him, and it was challenging.
Were there any organisations or charities that your parents were told about once he was diagnosed?
I don't think so, because he was diagnosed from quite an early age anyway. I think he was about 2, maybe 3. And he went to a special school when he was little.
Right.
Yeah, he went to a special school, and then when he was about 6 or 7, maybe a bit older, he went to a normal primary school that I went to.
Right.
But other than that, no.
Did the schools give any help?
Yeah, he had a carer when he went to my primary school, which was Whitford. He had a carer.
Yeah.
Who stayed with him until he left.
Right.
But then when he went to high school, he went to a private school first. and I don't think he really had any help there. The teachers are nice to him, but he didn't have any actual help. Then I think he went to the Argoid. Did he go to Moor Darwin? I don't think so. He went to, like, I think 3 different high schools, and he didn't last long at them anywhere.
Yeah.
In the end, he ended up, I think, with anger management. He did a course with that, but he also had someone who came to our house and taught him for his GCSEs. So in terms of help from charities and organisations, no, we didn't really have anything.
Did the doctors give your mum any sort of information whilst he was being diagnosed, or after he was diagnosed?
I don't think so. I know there's like medication you can get for it to calm him down.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it was my mum that didn't agree with it, or if it's the doctor who didn't want to give. I think it was the doctor who didn't want to give him that.
Right.
He never had any medication to calm him down, and no, not really. I don't think.
Now that your brother's an adult, do you think he's coping well with modern society?
Yeah, he is actually. He's how old is he now? How old am I? He's 24. Yes, he's 24, and he doesn't so much work because he can't. With his condition, he can't do paid work, but he does do a lot of volunteer work. He works at different radio stations. He works at one at Glyndor University.
Yeah.
And there's another one, and I can't remember what it's called. It's in Real Point FM, and he does them. So he's actually on the radio, and he does all this. He travels there. He gets trains to Cardiff by himself. He goes on these little breaks by himself. He goes to Scotland by himself. He's been to Birmingham. He travels by himself, and he does all this stuff which we thought he'd never be able to do and cope with. And like I said, he does go and do this volunteer work and do radio broadcasts. And he actually, he has friends that he's met through these things. And yeah, in terms of his anger and stuff, and actually be able to do stuff by himself, he can do it, which is brilliant.
The term autism is used here to describe all diagnoses on the autism spectrum, including classic autism, Asperger's syndrome, and high-functioning autism.
What services do you provide at Denby High School?
I'm a higher level TA, which means that I can teach small classes, and I do actually teach anger management, spellings, maths and English to small classes.
As a member of society, do you think the government does enough to support families who have a member that is autistic with regards to funding or any information?
I think that's a hard one for me to say, because not having a member of my family with autistic, I don't really know what is around. I've never really looked into seeing what is around for them. As a parent myself, I've never heard of any things, but there might be something there. I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know.
How do you feel about the school services towards pupils with autism?
In general, it's not too bad. The students themselves just get on with it, but there's no actual lessons to help the children themselves. Nothing is said like in Leighton's. Nobody knows that he's got Asperger's or anything like that.
Right.
Only immediate staff.
Yeah.
But it's down to the student if they want it known to his friends or whatever.
All right. Okay. From your own experiences, do you think society looks down on people with autism?
Yes. Not through school though. I have seen it. There is another lad that we had here. He's left school now actually. But I've seen him in the shops and he was quite bad.
Really?
And he would scream and everything. And we did try with him doing social skills services with him to try and get him out, but that was horrendous.
Was it?
And my sister actually works with autistic children like that. And I've actually seen her out and she's having to restrain when she's out now. I think that is bad. And the public don't know about it. They look down their nose and think, "Oh, what's she doing to him?"
Yeah.
So I think that's the public need to know more.
Yeah. How long was it before your son was diagnosed?
Leighton was 2.5 or 3 when he was, they sort of picked up that there could be a problem, and he went through the process of different diagnosis, and he was diagnosed when he was 7 years old, and then the year after he was diagnosed with autism, because the first diagnosis was ADHD, which I think for Leighton was a wrong diagnosis because he doesn't have many of the traits, to be honest, of ADHD.
What were the first signs that you realised that he was different from the other children?
From the baby, he never used to cry much or wasn't too bad like attention-wise. When he started getting a bit older and we used to take him out in the pram, if we used to take him in the shops or if anybody would come and say, "Oh, that's a nice baby," he used to scream really hysterical, and we'd have to take him out. And he used to headbutt the floor a lot in frustration because he was quite late speaking.
Was he on any sort of medication for it?
Leighton took Exoquin for the ADHD, which he took for about just over a year. Medication seemed to make him worse. His behaviour was horrendous. He would do like impulsive things like just run away and open the car door while it was going. Just basic dangerous things like that. Every time they tried to up the dose, his body just couldn't tolerate it. And I think it was just before he came off it, he was brought off it, because it caused like suicidal thoughts. And I think the most distressing thing of it was when he was excluded from school all the time, and he tied the cord of the dressing gown around his neck and tied it to the stairs. So obviously they brought him off the medication and they diagnosed him with depression. I think he was 9 then. So Leighton doesn't get medicated at all with anything now, the ADHD or the autism.
How has Leighton coped in school?
Primary school he didn't cope very well because the staff there weren't very understanding. They expected him to follow the school rules like every other child, which is not going to work with a child with autism. He spent the last 2 years that he was actually in that primary school just being excluded every week. I think he was excluded about 30 times, and it would always be for like 5 days. He'd make 1 day back in and then he'd be home again. The education people actually saw how the school were treating him, and they phoned me up one morning and they said it was in his best interest that he didn't go back to that school, which he didn't. Then Leighton spent 5 months at home, which for the last 2 months he was home tutored, which didn't go down very well with children with autism because the people that come in the house are strangers, so that didn't really do. The education found him a place in a local school which doesn't have many pupils. There was 9 children in Leighton's class, and the teachers were very understanding, and he did really well in school there. He took part in all the activities. He went to Ireland. He did everything everybody else did. He was included in it. It was never a problem. Leighton was told he would never go to mainstream high school because he wouldn't be able to cope. And because he'd had such a good 2 years in the other primary school, I was advised on Denby High School, which is quite away from where we live. I took Leighton to have a look. He liked it. He's done 3 years now in Denby High School. They have a unit there which is like for different disabilities, but the ratings of the autism are brilliant. All teachers are trained regularly. All the students are given talks on different disabilities, which helps. Never gets bullied. He's very popular and he's doing really well. He's catching up on his work, and at the moment he's doing really well.
Do you think you had the proper support provided by the government?
In some ways, yes. In a lot of ways, no. Just basically, primary schools especially get funded for each child they have in their school with special needs, whether it be the wheelchair, Down syndrome or anything, it all get funded. And then they get told that the training's there if they need it. So to be honest, if the government are giving them the money to look after that child's needs and make sure that the child's needs are met with the money and the care, that the teachers should have to be trained. They should, on the training days that they receive, there's no excuse why they can't go on these courses for autism or any other disability. They're told they don't have to, and yet they get the money, but they're not trained and they're not qualified, and they just don't spend the money on the children because the help's not there. So it's just spent on other children in the school then, which is not fair. They should clamp down and have to go on training if they're getting the money. The training should come in with it. As I found when Leighton was diagnosed, you're given a diagnosis and that's it, bye-bye. You have to find everything out yourself then, unless you join a support group. I'm lucky because I've got about 3 or 4 good friends that I've made with children of different ages with autism, which are really good, better than a support group because we're all in the same boat, and if anybody's got a problem we'll just speak to each other, which I found helpful. But it's hard working, the government likes to get people back into work. But, a parent with a child with autism, it's just so hard to actually find a job that's going to sort of, even when they get older, not so much just in school but lifelong really, it's, you're always going to have to be round, you can't commit yourself to a proper 9-to-5 job. So I think, they could step up there and help parents that way, I think.
Even though Leighton is autistic, he has succeeded in his education and outside of school hobbies, including football, where he has received a numerous amount of trophies. Some people live with autism for their entire life without ever getting a formal diagnosis. Often this is simply because autism wasn't widely known or understood when they were growing up. For adults, a diagnosis of autism can help to explain why they always found certain things difficult. For children, it can mean the right support is put in place from an early age.